Very good morning and welcome to the Green EFA briefing for the February plenary session, and I give the floor to Rebecca Harms.
First comment before coming to something that's not on the agenda. Yesterday we read that Mr. Van Rompuy felt that 2 days after the closing of the voting centers, that the council that thereafter, 2 days after the closing of the centers, that there would be the various candidates would be proposed by the council. In other words, this is a kind of provocation from Van Rompuy. In my opinion, Van Rompuy has always particularly at this moment that it's absolutely necessary to have an important, strong, decisive European elections, that this is something that would be to the interest of the European Parliament, of all parties in general, of all groups, that in other words we ought to work together with our different programs, and that we ought to not lead to unnecessary or deviant, if you like, politicization of certain issues. But when we see that the basis of power in general, that when the Council undermines in a certain fashion all this entire process, this is absolutely negative in fashion. This type of provocation is really unbelievable. So now with the colleagues and with the president, with the presidents, and of course with Mr. Schulz as well, we will discuss this particular issue, the comment made by Mr. Van Rompuy. Now I'll come to the Ukraine issue. 4 times I've been in Kiev this winter already, and I was there for during the Christmas vacation. I was there last week as well. On the one hand, I'm happy that following the escalation of that the government of Mr. Azarov has resigned, and it's important that the European Union be present there, that we fight for the liberties of the people of the Ukraine. But just as I left Kiev last Friday, it really wasn't clear, or people simply didn't want to bet on what the outcome would be, whether there would be a civil war in the country or not. This entire conflict that has further escalated following the resignation, actually, of Mr. Azarov, the situation appears to be of great concern indeed, particularly in view of the situation as it's developed with these oligarchs and the possibility that they might leave the country. Some of them already have, of course, passports from other countries of the European Union, for example, from Austria as well, and the possibility of their leaving the country altogether. And of course, this is something that will be further discussed in the Parliament tomorrow afternoon, and we will vote on a much stronger resolution on this issue of flight of individuals with European passports to the European Union from there. Now, it may be that the Parliament will play an important role with regard to correcting, if you like, some of the weak points of the Commission on this issue. But on other issues as well, such as the climate issue. Particularly what we want is efficient energy systems to be implemented. We want binding commitments on the part of the Commission. Of course, innovation and development of the European economies on the one hand, but the vote on this issue ought not in any way put at risk the various climate targets that have been in place for quite some time. They ought to be adhered to. And this is, of course, a key part of our discussion with the European Commission. And we will, once again, stick to the positions that we have adopted with regard to climate targets. No surprise that Barroso, on this particular issue, the position that he's adopted, no surprise whatsoever. Also, Oettinger's position, no surprise either. With the exceptions of Hedegaard and Potocnik, what we've seen is basically a kind of pushing forward of an ideology which has not been really in favor of the particular targets that have been set for climate change. But Europe is in a very finds itself in a decisive moment, particularly in this moment of crisis. There is a great danger, there are great risks ahead if these targets are not to be adhered to, particularly in view of the changes that have taken place over the last century as concerns the use of coal and other conventional energy sources.
Oui, au-delà de la dénonciation du scandale, de la provocation de M. Van Rompuy, qu'allez-vous faire? Est-ce que vous allez demander l'annulation de ce Conseil?
Apart from what was just said about Van Rompuy, what do you want to do about this? It's a very complicated matter, and it will surely pass on to the next Parliament. One thing is sure, I do not agree with the proposal of the head of the Liberal group. He wants to have a conference of presidents 2 days after the elections to prepare a proposal that's really aberrant. Then Van Rompuy is being very provocative, and quite apart from that, we have to show him where the intellectual and political bounds lie. We've had it up to the neck with Van Rompuy. He's always at the right place at the wrong time. The right place for him, that is. So it's very simple. This Parliament has to express a view. So we will conduct a debate. There needs to be a resolution from this Parliament. The Parliament will have 3 weeks in order to convene so that the groups are assembled and establish a majority. And after these 3 weeks, so a month after the election, the Council can act depending on the names which have come forward in the Parliament by way of majority. Then the Council can come up with its proposals. If there is a European Council meeting, then there's only one solution. If not, then the Parliament would take up the proposal of the Council and reject it, regardless whether it's Merkel or Obama. Whoever makes the suggestion, that will be rejected. We need to be clear about this. Mr. Van Rompuy ought to go back to where he belongs, back home.
Are there more questions, please?
Oui, à propos de l'Ukraine, je voulais savoir, êtes-vous favorable à des...
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask a question. Are you in favor of freezing visas for Ukrainians coming to the EU?
Yes, I've indeed sanctions. I've repeated that on a number of occasions. First of all, the travel restrictions. Travel restrictions for those, for example, high police officials, judges, or people that are responsible within the government apparatus for violence and any sort of violence or any sort of breach of human rights. There are numerous different cases of attacks on journalists or attacks on civil rights peoples in the Maidan. There are numerous different reports of terror, of violence, incredible violence against these individuals, particularly during the weeks before Christmas. And travel restrictions, yes, indeed, that is what what the people of the Ukraine want from us. And at the same time, these individuals, everybody there suffers from a very, very strict visa regime. So people want a liberalization. It's very difficult to get a visa, very expensive as well. But those people that plunder the country, that have led to this escalation and violence as well, that these people either have a Schengen visa or, as mentioned, some of them have, in a number of Austrian cases, as we know, for example, Abuzov, Kluyev, and Azarov as well have Austrian passports. Some of our Austrian colleagues have investigated this. Indeed, they have Austrian passports. It is possible for them to leave the country and to go to Austria. These people who have been responsible for all of the violence there. So these people, I was quite shocked by the fact that there are so many people that have already acquired European passports. But once again, travel restrictions for those individuals, but a liberalization of the visa regime for the simple man on the street. This is very important. So these people who have gained incredible wealth from the privatization of state property, or money laundering, or tax evasion, and so on and so forth. These people who have become oligarchs, and these people who, for example, when Yanukovych says martial law is to be declared, that we don't have anyway this flight of individuals to Europe, people who are responsible for all of this violence.
Ja, dann habe ich noch die
Now, what about the Greens in Germany? Who's going to take on the chief position there? This is not an unpleasant question as you posed. As Ska Keller and José Bové have already won the very unpleasant primaries. Of course, our group has always said that there were certain problems with regard to the process and so on and so forth, but we don't determine that. We'll have to see now. Next weekend, Rebecca and Ska will candidate against one another for the top position, and we'll see what the result will be. And as a result of the result, well, I hope that, of course, Rebecca will be elected, and in Germany as well. And the two top candidates will be in charge then, and will have to carry out the European pre-electoral process. And then the basis vote, well, my vote, I'm a little bit more familiar with this than Dany. No, I have the strong support following the Green primary of from my country, of course. The top candidate in Germany. This is something that is definite. I've gone through the primaries and to a certain extent lost them, but regardless of that, the party ought to have the opportunity to decide. There have been a number of years of preparation for this. Of course, it's not easy to become the chief, the head of the Greens in Germany. There's no doubt no doubt about that. But with regard to the various key issues, for example, dealing with the crisis and the entire range of ecological issues, rollback and so on and so forth, all of these play an important role as well. So after 10 years here and 5 years as head of the group here with Dany, I think it's reasonable that that it all take place through this online voting system that's been instituted. We have to make an effort as politicians. There's a specific basis, the basis, just to make it clear to you. So there's a system indeed for Europe. José Bové in France, he's a regional leader. So these would be, first of all, would take place, the votes would take place at the national level and then, of course, at the European level. But unfortunately, that's what's most logical, but not, unfortunately, not everything logical is how it usually works. So the Green Party in Germany carried out its elections during the party assembly, and or whether they will carry out such an assembly, a decision will be made there. They'll decide whether it will be SCA or somebody else. Of course, that will all depend on what will come out of that particular party assembly. José Bové is the leader, if there's no question. Well, there is no top candidate in France, and there are no top candidates ever in general, but of course the position that Bové has is something that is undisputed at this point. So and now it's not the French leader, but rather for Europe overall. Yes, it will. He is one of the two that has been elected for the European Green Party. And the national parties also have their own heads. And that's how it was, and that's how it is, and it will be. There is no European list. There is no European list. If there were a European list, there would be a debate. There are national lists, and each national list, of course, functions it doesn't really function as the system does in Germany. In France, it's totally different. There is no national list. In Germany, we do have a national list, whereas in France, there is no national list. So it's for all parties, not only for the Greens. It's something symbolic indeed, but it is important. Though it is an important decision within European policies to have this, to establish a particular entity, person who would be in charge of the party. And of course, the results, as concerns me, has to do with my experience and the particular competences, so to say, that I have. So, of course, there are a number of emotional issues that come to the floor as well, and I'm not somebody made out of wood. So, with the primaries, well, with regard to the primaries, very, very briefly, the primaries, that was an idea of the chairman of the European Green Party, chairman of which was Mr. Bütikofer. They had the possibility to have representatives of the national parties to travel all together in order to get all together in order to conduct this particular project at a European level. We have two large parties. Luxembourg and Holland were against this particular way of doing things. The Germans had something else to do because the German federal elections were taking place. The French weren't interested in that. So in the end, they said that it wouldn't be possible to have two German candidates alone. They said they didn't want that, so it didn't work. And at this point, of course, voting is open to the 300 million European citizens above 16 years of years to participate in this particular electoral process. Now, so. Right now, we have approximately 200,000 members when you take all of the members together in all of the European countries. Basically, European citizens have mobilized, and basically what we saw behind that was a type of logic, which was a new possibility to mobilize, and this was a signal that basically if we reduced it to the national level, that it would give more meaning to the citizens of Europe, of the individual countries, in other words, to vote in a certain direction or to participate in this process overall. And then, so after having things done at the national level, move up to the European level.
Out of time. Thank you very much for coming. Have a nice weekend.